hold this anymore.
Hey guys, it's Justin from JJ Longboards doing a review on my new Landyachtz 925. I got this board about 2 weeks ago off of Muirscape for around $250, and I've been riding it about every day since I got it, so I could get a pretty solid opinion on it. I took this with me up to California and Los Angeles during spring break, so I got to ride it around there up by the beach and do a little free riding up there by Venice Beach. One of the questions I've gotten about this board is why I chose the 2011 version over the new 2012 version. That's just because this board was really innovating to the longboarding style, and I wanted to be a part of that, you know. And I also like the gas pedal shape on this version rather than the 2012 version, but that's just my opinion. And I like drafts. On this board, I got ABEC 11 center set free rides 84A. I got Bear Grizzly 852s, which is pretty much the main truck for this board. Stock bushings and Bones Reds bearings with Cairo spacers. Quick specs on the board: it's 40.5 inches long. It's got a width of 10 inches and a wheelbase of 31 inches. Some of the pluses I noticed off the start with this board was, first off, I liked the gas pedals. The gas pedals are something new that I've never had on any board before, and it really helps with keeping me locked in the slides, and it allows for good foot placement in stuff like stand-up slides and regular just Coleman's and push-up slides. And it really just helps me keep my feet balanced on the board and helps a lot with initiating and getting off of the slide. I really liked the W concave also because it really helps with locking me into the board and keeping me stable and onto the board. But it's not deep to where it's uncomfortable, but it's deep enough to where I feel comfortable and locked onto the board. Another thing I like about this board is it has a rocker, which means that the actual center of the board is lower than it is to the nose and the tail. And that also helps with keeping you locked in, and it also helps a lot for when you're doing downhill, which this board can be used for slide, and it helps with a little bit of free riding. Some of the negative things I saw of this board was the nose and tail are not nearly as long as I would like, but this board isn't really meant to be used for freestyle, so it's not really usable, honestly, the nose and tail. You can't really do manuals on it. Another reason you can't really use the nose and tail is because this board is pretty heavy. For me, at least, I weigh about 130 pounds, which is pretty light, I guess, and it's just not it's not light enough to do any freestyle and kick the board around. To actually be able to flip the board around and do some freestyle tricks, you'd have to really kick down, but I don't do that anyway. And this board is mainly used for free riding and slight downhill. You can probably take this board around 40s and be comfortable, but because of the rocker, you're probably going to start to get a little speed wobble after that. My personal opinion on this board is pretty well. Whenever I took it up to Los Angeles with me, I was able to do a lot of free riding, but it was kind of boring taking it around the beach and commuting on it because that's just not really what its discipline is. It's mainly just used for being on streets that are empty and being able to do a lot of free riding and doing a lot of spinning, and on those sidewalks I couldn't do a lot of that. I also noticed that the grip tape on this board isn't as great as I'd like it to be, but that's not a big deal because I'll probably replace it. Around the gas pedals, it's already starting to chip a little bit, and which isn't that big of a deal. On the nose and tail, the grip tape's starting to come off a little bit, but I don't really use those, so it's not that big of a deal. I've run it into a couple curbs, and the wood is chipping a little bit, so it's not the most durable wood ever, but it's durable enough to where it's not affecting the board enough. So one of the main things I just recommend for you if you're thinking about picking up this board, you just got to make sure you're picking it up for what it's used for, which is pretty much free riding and slight downhill. But other than that, it can be a commuter and a little bit of a carver, but that's not its discipline, so it's not going to be nearly as fun as picking up more of a flexi board. Speaking of flex, this flex on the board is very low. It doesn't have a lot of flex, which is what you'd expect from a free riding board, and the dampening of the flex just allows it to be a little bit more stable and keep you onto the board and allow you to move around more instead of flexing in those slides. Also, another thing I'd recommend when you're thinking about buying this board is you got to take into account for that Bear Grizzlies are the main truck for this board, and any other trucks, I've heard many complaints about people having problems fitting them on, like Paris or Randall's, and they have trouble fitting them on this board. So I just go ahead and be safe and get the Bear Grizzlies, but if you want to do more research and put some other trucks on there, just make sure you know what you're doing and you know that they'll fit on this board. Another thing is that because the wheel cutouts are rather small, you got to make sure you're taking into account of that and buying wheels that are small enough that you won't get wheel bite. So I threw 72mm wheels on there, but that's probably the largest I'd go while having a loose truck setup. You probably want to buy 70mm. You probably couldn't fit 75mm like these Durians on there. You'd probably get wheel bite unless you keep them really tight, the trucks. So you could throw bigger wheels like this on there, say if you wanted to do downhill, but you'd have to make sure you keep the trucks really tight because any looseness will give you wheel bite. So overall on this board, I'd probably rate an 8 out of 10 because it's not very versatile, but in its disciplines, which is free riding and downhill, it definitely gets the job done, and it does great at that. This has been a review by JJ Longboards, and if you're thinking about picking this board up, I definitely recommend it. Thanks, guys.